up, everybody? I am the Toddfather, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast, The Rest is Rock and Roll History. Today, we have a very special guest, longtime friend, one of the staples of Detroit music, Justin Pidruzny.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm good.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Anytime, man. Like I said, we go back a long ways. We first met when he was buying the talent at St. Andrews Hall, the legendary and historic. So that makes you historic, too.
I guess so, yeah.
You're so modest. Well, take me back to the beginning. How did you get into this business? And you started at the legendary St. Andrews, and now you're here at the Crofoot Lounge in Pontiac.
So I started off playing in local bands. I wanted to be a rock star like every other 15-year-old.
You are a rock star.
Thank you, Todd. And I played shows around town and played at the Shelter and St. Andrews and Clutch Cargo's and all those venues, and got the opportunity to start working as an intern for SFX Entertainment, which became Clear Channel, and then
that dates you.
Yeah, and now today it's known as Live Nation. But I passed out flyers and did shows for my band, and they were always really gracious and let me go to other shows to promote my band and get the word out. And in 2003, there was an opening for a manager at St. Andrews. And I had never worked in a concert venue, regularly. I just played shows. So I went straight from doing like retail musical instrument store to managing St. Andrews Hall when I was 23 years old. Jeez. And I started there in October of 2003. And I think it was July of 2003, Spin Magazine wrote an article about St. Andrews and called it America's Craziest Club. So I went from...
Brought to you by Justin Pidruzny.
I went from, selling people reeds for their saxophones to running America's Craziest Club at 23. And I really didn't have any idea what I was doing when I started.
It's exactly the same thing, though, right?
Yeah, totally. Totally the same.
Well, you were there in the, let's call them the dirty
the heyday
days of Detroit. But at a time where, kind of like CBGB's back in the day, all hell's breaking loose in the Bowery. And when you kind of were there, all hell was still breaking loose, I guess, in Detroit.
It was kind of the Wild West back then.
Yeah.
Anything went. It was a much more violent time. You didn't see a lot of people walking around on foot as much as you do now, and it wasn't a friendly environment. But
no 22-year-old girl walking her dog.
No,
at 10
never,
p.m.
never. At least back then, if there was, somebody was chasing her.
The dog wasn't doing its job at the time.
So it was a unique experience. It was a unique environment, and I grew up a lot. Going from a teenager playing shows there into my early 20s being an operations manager and doing some of the booking. It was definitely a wild time.
I can only imagine. I mean, yes, it's still work.
Right.
But as a former concert promoter and event promoter myself, there's a lot of fun that goes with it too.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, you can attest to, and that's what we kind of talk about on this podcast too, as much as we can, is the moments, those concert memories. Everybody has them.
Right.
You're in this, in that case, what, like 500-ish in one room? Everybody's having the same experience.
It was St. Andrews was a little bigger than that. The capacity back then was 1,000.
Oh, wow.
And then the Shelter, the additional capacity down there was 226.
1,000 people in St. I guess that makes right, but is that still legal?
I don't know what the capacity is now. Yeah,
I feel like it's a lot less.
Yeah, it might be. It might be.
Not like I never put 1,000 people in a room that was legally 400.
Right.
But I won't tell you when, and I won't tell you where. So
right.
You can't get me. But a lot of things changed. I remember going down there. That was the place to be.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even around that time actually is when, I can't remember what year, but that's when 8 Mile came out.
Yes.
And if it wasn't already solidified, the Shelter especially, they made a focus on that because of the downstairs and the rap battles. But that made it more as a local kind of thing. And the bands that tour know. The bands that tour know. That's, if you're coming to Detroit the first time, you were likely playing the Shelter.
Right.
Hoping to earn your way upstairs or surprise everybody.
Kind of follow the ladder all the way up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it was designed back in the day, because the owner of the Crofoot used to own a company called Ritual that did all the club shows in town, and Cellar Door did a lot of the bigger shows, and they had an agreement where they would work together, and once the bands got too big for Ritual's venues, they would still get a piece and be partners, as the acts continued to grow to the arena level.
I used to come up, well, I guess this is way back to when I was a young promoter. I really got going in like 1999. I, like you, played in bands and did all that kind of stuff. But being in Windsor, right across the border from Detroit, you think, oh, it's so far away. You know what I mean? It's just a river, but in reality, it's two worlds.
Absolutely.
But this is a huge but. If I wanted to book somebody that wasn't just a Canadian act, I could do that because nobody knew them here. But if they were like Our Lady Peace or Sum 41 or any of these up and comers back in those days, and 89X would play them, then it became a Detroit interest.
Right.
So there were numerous occasions where I would try and book a band, or I would, and Ritual or any of these companies would be like, who's this dude in Windsor?
Right.
And why is he plucking the cherries out of our tree? And I was like, son of a bitch, you know. So I got told a few times I lost shows because of that. So now I know who it was.
Right.
No, but that's part of the game. There used to be like an unwritten rule, kind of like the 60-60 rule. You might have heard of that, or that might just be like a term where it's like 60 days or 60 miles.
Yeah, the radius clause.
The radius clause.
It's usually a little bigger than that now.
So it's changed.
It's like 150 miles and
fair.
Yeah.
But Detroit's literally like you could throw a couple.
Right. You wouldn't play Detroit, and Windsor. And the thing that I've always found too that I thought was interesting, because I started doing shows in Windsor around 2015, and I did learn my lesson, because people from Windsor will come to Detroit to see a show, but people from Detroit won't really go to Windsor to see a show.
Nobody from Detroit's heading down south for a concert.
No.
Why? You know. You know. But the thing is, with that being said, there were shows, because I get a lot of Americans, but it would depend on the artist, and it depends. I guess you could say they were actual music lovers. You know, if it's not in Detroit, it's in Canada. That's how it sounds to them. Oh, it's in Canada.
Right.
It's not just Windsor, like across the river. It was a bigger deal.
Right.
Despite the fact that at the time the bar scene was a lot hotter in Windsor. The exchange was high. I think it's about where it is now, but that made tickets cheaper. It made it night out in Windsor cheaper. So I did get a lot of Americans. However, there was always a contrast. I'll share this quick story. One time I booked an artist named Matthew Good Band. Now, when I was doing my shows, I had this beautiful thing called Much Music.
Right.
That was one of the biggest supports. For me, Much Music, if they're on Much Music.
For those that don't know, Much Music is like the Canadian MTV.
It's the Canadian version of MTV, exactly. And it was huge. Of course, it was national. And any of these bands, like Matthew Good, at the time, he was the #1 artist in the country. Like, ridiculous amount of weeks at #1, 2 consecutive albums, like 8 hits in a row. I put him in a venue, and it held 3,000. And it was one of those shows where I'm like, man, this is expensive. I think I went all over my head. I won't get into details of that, but I kind of did. However, the show sold like 2,500 tickets, which is the biggest show that I had in a hall ever at that point, just with one artist, not a festival or anything like that. So he comes in, and he had a reputation for being an asshole. He even sold shirts that said, I hear Matt Good's an asshole. He sold those.
That's awesome.
Truth. My brother had one. So we're sitting there, we're having a great time. You know, I met him a few times at festivals in Toronto before when he was up and coming, and we were playing soccer that day. He's a big soccer fan, and we were kicking the ball around, talking, having a good time. And I got to hear him do an interview, and he was being that guy, right?
Right.
And if he sees this interview, he's going to call me out or some shit, because that's what he used to do. But I'm just saying this just as an example. But he later kind of dissed me in a national Canadian magazine. He's like, yeah, this guy from Windsor can't even sell at my shows. I'm the biggest thing since sliced bread in Canada.
Right.
And the whole premise was, I'm playing St. Andrews Hall in Detroit. St. Andrews Hall in Detroit. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to the real Detroit Rock City now, where the fans are really this and that. And I'm going to prove, this market was bigger, and Windsor didn't show up, even though they did. That's a lot of people.
Right.
It's only 100,000 people-ish in
right.
Windsor. So anyways, he books the show in Detroit. I call his manager. I'm like, I'll go see him. I'll go say hi, whatever. So I get on the guest list to go to the show at St. Andrews. I get there. I don't think there were 50 people there, and most of them were comps. And he talks smack about me, and I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, still love you, man. Still dig your tunes, but, kind of idea.
Right.
It will piss me off. Nobody knew who I was. But that kind of, it gets out there. It was called Chart Magazine. And then people will be like, oh, this guy maybe shouldn't go to Windsor. Maybe he can't sell.
Right.
Anyways, when you're charging me enough where I have to charge $40 for a ticket, and I get 2,600 people, that's a success to me.
Oh, absolutely.
But to him, he's like, wasn't sold out, so it put a little stain on his thing. But coming to Detroit should have been his marquee thing. But it just showed that there's this lack of reach of Much Music.
Oh, absolutely.
So if 89X didn't play him, it didn't matter. And that's where he didn't understand this cross-border market.
Right.
And who would? You're just like Detroit, boom. Or
Well,
Detroit.
lots of bands. I've booked plenty of bands from Canada over the years, and like Headley is a good example, where they would sell out arenas in Canada,
Yes, they would.
and they came here and played the Pike Room, and they had a big tour bus, and they weren't upset about it. You know, that they had the expectation that we're playing a 250 capacity room, but you know, most of the time when a band plays the Pike Room, they don't show up with a tour bus and all of the the amenities that you get when you're a bigger band on the road. So you're definitely right. There's a loss of translation a lot of times from, you know, the level of success that the bands in Canada have at home as opposed to what they have when they come over here.
Right. Well, people think it's all one, and clearly it's not.
Right.
So Canada has its charts, its releases, and you know, at the time, maybe they released Matt Good's record in the U.S., but realistically, every country's separate. So you'll have this band playing, like you said, huge arenas in Canada. And here's another example that using St. Andrews. I went to see Everclear. They headlined. You might even remember that. You might have did it. No, it might be before your time. Anyway, Everclear at St. Andrews Hall. Our Lady Peace was opening.
Okay.
And they were doing this all across the country. Everclear had like hits like Father of Mine,
Right.
Santa Monica. They were pretty
Right.
big, you'd think. Even played the shit out of them. They come to St. Andrews, sold out show. But Our Lady Peace is also killing it on 89X.
Right.
And the place was packed. You know, they could have probably played the Fillmore back at the time. So Everclear goes in, headlines the show. Our Lady Peace is killing the opening set. During the middle of that leg of that whole tour, they cut and did Canada. Like, you know, they wanted to do the
Right.
So they do across Canada as part of this whole tour. But the difference was they weren't playing little 500 to 1,000 capacity clubs in Canada. They were playing 18 to 20,000 capacity arenas.
Right.
And Our Lady Peace headlined, and now Everclear had to be
Was
the
the
support
opener.
act.
Yeah.
And we want to talk about humbling.
Right.
You know, what's his name? Art there. Actually, they're going to be playing here. They just
did. I just saw them.
They were just here, yeah.
They were at the
Crazy.
Strand, yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that. But, yeah, so how humbling is that? You know, to see the difference in the border? Little club.
Right.
Arena, and the support and headliner
Flip-flops,
switch.
yeah.
Some people would never understand that or why. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's a huge difference.
Absolutely.
It's a huge
Two different
difference.
worlds.
Yeah. Like, Our Lady Peace is not sold out arenas here, but they've come pretty close to that level. I mean, you know, they've consistently sold out the Fillmore and
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
like that, but maybe even in their heyday they couldn't have, you know, despite the support of 89X.
Yeah, I don't think they ever got bigger than
No.
the, you know, large theater level.
Yeah. But they were like 12 times platinum in Canada on their second album.
One of my
so-
favorite bands of all time.
Yeah, me too. I gotta say it. They definitely are. I mean, their new stuff, they're just putting out a new record right now, so they're doing a Canadian arena tour, coincidentally.
Awesome.
In the new year, celebrate their 30th anniversary.
That's
Or
crazy.
One of their albums' 30th anniversary. Man, I feel like every episode I'm dating myself in this. We've
We
done
get
it like
older
4
and
times
older every
already,
time we
so-
talk.
So now, after all these years, you're in Pontiac.
Yes, I've been
You're
here
at the Crofoot.
almost.
Talk about the transition.
So I was at St. Andrews Hall and the State Theater, which became the Fillmore, kind of doing double duty until 2007, and then I came out to the Crofoot in October of 2007, and I've been here ever since. So it's going on 18 years, I think, at this point.
Holy crap.
And I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of changes in the music business. I feel like the pandemic set a lot of things, you know, on its ear when it came to live music. I was laid off for a year and a month during the pandemic, which was pretty wild.
It killed the industry all around the world.
Oh yeah,
for a time.
yeah. We were, I believe, so we have a big giant parking lot outside the Crofoot, and in 2021 we were doing some outdoor pod shows. And I believe we were the only promoter doing shows at that time in the country.
But you have this giant, like, for people that don't know or can't obviously see us,
Right.
We're across the street from where, before the Crofoot, it used to be Warped Tours.
They used to do Warped Tour here,
And
yeah.
it's attached to this amazing parking garage right here. It's
The Phoenix
literally
Phoenix
less
Plaza.
over, yes. The shows I've seen there. This was a hub of rock and roll.
Right.
Chicago's Seventh House, you know, Have a Nice Day Cafe, but they didn't really do shows. But this kind of came in on the tail end of that, and then getting to the pandemic, it's like everything disappeared.
Right.
But Crofoot's still here.
Yep, we're still here, still
So-
doing shows.
Talk more, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but talk more about the fact that you were the only ones. Because my friend back home, he's an agent, runs Feldman Associates.
Yes.
And I was like, man, this must be shit. You're like off. He's like, no, I've actually been working harder during the pandemic
Right.
than I was before, because he needed to find creative ways to keep stimulating
Right.
the bands or
bands want to make money
his own paycheck.
be on the road making money. So, we set up a system in the parking lot right after the pandemic, and in the middle of all of it, where we did what we called pod shows, where you could buy 4 tickets. You pull up in your car. They usually get 2 parking spaces in the lot. And then it would be bike racked off, so you'd just have this little space that was yours, and they were socially distanced shows, and it worked really well for us. It kept me motivated. I was worried that there was a possibility that live music might not come back at all.
Right.
And I remember saying in the middle of the pandemic that the capacity of the Crofoot's 1,100, and I was convinced that we were never going to put 1,100 people in the room again, because I didn't think people would get back to normal. I didn't think that social distancing would go away, and here we are in 2024, and things are totally back to normal as far as that goes.
We're anti-social distancing.
So, we got through it. We learned a lot about ourselves and the business, and we're just moving forward. It's a different game now.
Well, we never knew if, really, it could have been, the most horrific potential result. And I think, it was a little bit of a drag for a few years. Yes, there are still some tail ends and shrapnel that kind of follows behind, but concerts, they changed, but they didn't change. Those pods were kind of a joke to me. I remember going to a Blue Jays game, and it's like a pod meant 4 seats together and then 4 to separate you from the next
Right,
floor.
right.
So, there were no real pods, but
Or barriers, yeah.
It's just like, how do we get people in here and still make some money, because these guys got to play baseball, we're not
Right,
stopping.
right.
But yeah, just the craziness. Oh, the global worldwide pandemic.
And it feels like ages ago, but it really wasn't that long ago.
Well, what are we looking at? We're going on, it's 5 years.
Yeah. This March.
Holy crap, yeah. I'll never forget that, too. It was 3/11 day. 3/11 day was the day that 3/11 played in Vegas. That they pulled off the show, and I'll never forget that. And then that was it. Like that day, people were like, oh, NBA's canceled, maybe baseball's canceled,
shutting everything down.
Canceled, whatever is canceled. And I remember there was a few things, like obviously you have a lot of friends, like I have a lot of friends in this industry, and it killed a lot of people's livelihood.
Absolutely.
For a
lot
while.
of businesses and a lot of venues went out of business permanently, during the pandemic, and that's why we're thankful to still be in business and operating. And we do all kinds of things here at the Crofoot. We weddings, special events, concerts. It's not just one lane for us. We we'll do all different kinds of events all in the same day or same week. So,
do you think concerts? I've been here to a few. There's a level of you have the version of the shelter in the Pike Room, and then you have the St. Andrews Hall main room, which is the main Crofoot room. How much harder is it, though, unless it's a marquee band, to fill these rooms? Like, are you finding people just would rather stay home now?
Not necessarily. If it's an act that people want to see, they're going to come out.
Fair.
The real challenge that I've noticed post-pandemic is we've lost a lot of market share. I feel like in pre-pandemic, when tours would go out, we would see probably 80% of all the avails for tours, and be in the mix on a lot of things. And post-pandemic, I feel like agencies have shifted. People have left from one agency to another as far as booking agents go for the artists. So some of the relationships were lost, in that year off, and it's been difficult to maintain market share against the bigger promoters in the market.
Fair.
Detroit's also interesting in that we have Live Nation and we have AEG in the market, and some promoters don't have that challenge.
Do you feel you're too far enough away from Detroit where you can be individual, but you're too close to Detroit where it holds back?
So I don't consider Pontiac a separate market from Detroit. Me personally, we're kind of situated where the majority of people that are going to go to Detroit or go to Pontiac for a show, they live right in the middle.
Yeah.
So they're either going 15 minutes north or 15 minutes south. And you would never on a tour play Detroit and Pontiac. I consider Pontiac part of the Metro Detroit market.
They probably still come here and say, "What's up, Detroit?"
Right. Yeah. We do get a lot of Pontiac, but
they do 10 minutes down the road in Clarkson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, Detroit, what's up?
So, but nobody really identifies that are going to concerts as being from Pontiac for the most part. Everybody's from the suburbs and the surrounding area. So when they're at a show, they're kind of indifferent about it. I feel like.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's, that goes without saying. I guess it's like there's so many places like Hamtramck has Smalls and the other place. What's the little club in Mexican town now. There's a lot of small bands, like Not a Surf just played this little, I should know this. My friend invited me to go to the show, but there's a little room in Mexican town.
Really?
I can't remember what it is. I'll figure that out later. But yeah, Not a Surf. I mean, you had them at the shelter.
Oh yeah.
When there was nobody there. It was like 5 of us.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been how many were there here. But they're still going, playing rooms of 5. Sorry, Not a Surf. I'm sure there was better days.
There's been lots of shows where I have worked when bands were on the way up, where it's just like, I remember in the shelter, I did a show with a band called Stella Star, and the direct support band was the Killers. And I think there was 100 people there, and even here at the Crofoot, we've done acts like 21 Pilots. They played the Pike Room, did not sell it out, came back, did the Ballroom, because it was on the way up, and now they play arenas, and they'll do 2 nights at Madison Square Garden.
And they have like, 4 big singles?
Oh, yeah.
4 singles is what fills an arena now, right?
Yeah.
We need to write some songs. Like that whole thing's crazy to me. I feel like some of these bands are not wanting, the ones that have some clout already, they're kind of dropping an album that may or may not hit. They're kind of like unconcerned about that. Like a Blink 182, comes back. They have a little more clout, but all these bands are going right to the big arenas. And even some that I think are not really meant to be there, but they push them, and they'll book them 10 months in advance.
Right.
Just try to fill it. I don't know if they're trying to avoid the road or if they're just trying to cash in while they still can. But I know selling albums is not the way to make money anymore.
Oh yeah, going on tour and selling merchandise and
VIP packages.
Yeah, meet and greets.
Yeah.
Meet and greets are a big part of the industry now.
Well, do you remember when we were at Justin and I have not been to a lot of concerts together. However, this summer we went to see New Kids on the Block together.
We did go see New Kids on the Block.
And it was a great time. I brought my wife. You bought one of your coworkers here,
yes.
J-Rock.
He's kind of my New Kids on the Block buddy.
Yes. Yeah, you guys have been to a bunch of shows
been
before.
to a bunch of shows.
Now, that was amazing, and I remember you're like, ask the lady sitting on the other side what she paid for these tickets. And it was some kind of ridiculous, overpriced, only a crazy former fan who's now middle-aged and whatever would pay for one of those tickets.
Right.
Did she say like $1,200, $1,500?
It was a significant amount, yeah.
Double. So that's insane to me, but then that you have these little pits on the side of the stage with, I didn't see any guys, but I guess all women, and I could only imagine what they paid to be standing in that thing on the stage. So every 20 seconds they might get a slap 5 or something.
It's a ton. I did, in addition to booking shows as a concert promoter, I've done work as a tour manager and booking agent, and I booked some tours for Jordan Knight from New Kids on the Block. That's how we got to attend the show. I phoned in a favor and got some tickets, but the fan experience on a New Kids show or a Jordan Knight solo show is pretty intense, and they'll pay whatever they. Yeah. So on the Nick and Knight tour, it was Jordan and Nick Carter from Backstreet. We did a co-headline tour across the U.S. and Canada, and there were VIP packages all the way up to a $1,500 option where you got basically a tour laminate, and you could follow around anybody from the tour all day. So I would be there.
Anywhere but the buses.
Well, yeah, pretty much. So I'd be there at load in, just sitting there. Nick and Jordan would be at the hotel. They hadn't even come to the venue yet. It's like noon. I'm sitting there typing at a desk, and there'll be like 5 or 6 fans just sitting on a couch behind me watching me type on a computer.
They get to see what it's really like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Boring.
And then it was just a whole bunch of, when is Jordan getting here?
Yeah.
What time is Nick going to be here?
Yeah.
Whenever they show up, I don't make them
ask them.
Yeah, I don't make them be here at a certain time. So
when you're the most popular guy in the room because of the guy who's
right
not
that you're
in the
working
room.
for. Yeah. So, and I always say that is kind of like when you're on tour with stars like that, it's kind of like living on a reality TV show.
Right.
Because the first time that J-Rock and I went to see New Kids after I got off tour with Jordan, I said to him, there's definitely fans of the show that are going to know who I am just because they followed those guys so religiously. And at the end of the show, we were waiting to go backstage to say hi to Jordan, and we're sitting there, J-Rock and I, and these 3 women walk up and they lean in and they're like, JP, is that you? And I nudged J-Rock and I went, I told you that people would know who I was. So
you get the recognition.
Yeah, the fans think the crew are part of the family, and they just they appreciate all the work that goes into putting on a tour like that.
Man, there used to be this band, I don't know if you know them from Canada, called Serial Joe.
Not familiar.
They were called Much Music Babies.
Okay.
And they had a good year to 2 years of success where they just blew up. They were like 16 years old. They were kind of like a Canadian Silverchair.
Okay.
And their music was very Rage Against the Machine meets Limp Bizkit.
Okay.
So that was their kind of their niche, but they were 16 years old.
So they had a lot of angst for 16.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, oh, homework. Oh my God, I got this. But and I booked them several times, and I had them do a record store signing, and I'm telling you, there were 3 times the amount of people in line that could get tickets for the show.
Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely insane. These kids are just like, and the singer's mom was their manager. They had a momager.
The momager.
Slash tour manager, slash, all these things. But I'll never forget. And, after we got to know each other a little better, she would hook me up all the time. Hey, come to Toronto, Molson Park. We're playing Edgefest, or we're doing this, or come up to London, come upstate. We have an extra hotel room. You can take it, stuff like that. And I just remember she would be bombarded by all these little teenage girls constantly, because eventually they get to recognize her.
Right.
Or just like you. And she had this mom vibe where she didn't want to let any of the young girls down. And she definitely overextended her son, Ryan.
Overpromised.
Ryan did, yeah, all the time. But everybody would know her and want to give her, all these girls want to give her a hug. They tried to get that relationship with her.
Right.
So they felt they could get closer to her son or the band
at
some points. And I feel like it definitely worked.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you could walk up and you'd be like, oh, Mrs. Dennis. I was like, oh, I remember you.
It's the same with me when I was on tour.
Yeah.
You get to recognize faces, and then you know them by name. And
even as a promoter, for me in Windsor, it's like people recognize me still to this day from shows. Because I was in charge. I was the one running around like a headless chicken. And, it's like, no, I don't have time to bring you back to meet the dude from Sloan or the dude from I Mother Earth or whoever the hell was performing. But usually they're relentless. Hell, I used to do it when I was young. my buddy Pete reminded me that I loved the Cranberries, Dolores O'Riordan specifically from the Cranberries, that we went to see them at Pine Knob, and I brought a bouquet of daisies because I knew she liked daisies. And we had front row, dude, at Pine Knob.
Did you propose? You're just...
Dude, yeah. I proposed to her a whole bouquet individually. But every time he was making so much fun of me. But it was, it was like 19 years old, whatever, and I was just like, oh, it's rough.
Shooting your shot.
Yeah, so I'd front row, and every time she'd come my way, I'd hold one daisy, and she'd take it. And eventually, I just gave her the whole thing. But I mean, that's people get wrapped up in the music or the stardom or whatever, and it's
absolutely
like you go on another level. That's what creates our business. Now, that for me was one of those moments where I'm like, oh, I'll never forget that Dolores took the flowers from me. And when I started doing concert promotions, that's what I love the most. Creating experiences for people, giving them a memory. 1,000 people in the Crofoot are all going to have a different experience of what happened that night. Maybe they were wasted. Maybe it was for their kid. Maybe it's their favorite, but it's not their wives. But they went anyway. But still, there's a thing. We all leave. We're all sharing the same vibe, and that's why I started this podcast. So if I had to ask you, not just as a music fan, former musician, but what kept you or what keeps you motivated to put these shows on? What do you hope is the ultimate all around, other than a show, a band comes in and out, they're paid and you sell tickets?
There is some value in I always say I bring the fun. I get the opportunity to book somebody's favorite band, and be a part of an experience, and they don't even know. I always consider myself kind of like the Wizard of Oz, right? Like, I'm behind the curtain. You might see me running around, but you don't really know who I am or what I'm doing. But there is I get a certain level of enjoyment out of the fact that I get to bring somebody's favorite band to town. They get to have a positive experience, make a memory, and I played a part of it, and they don't even know. So that's a big thing for me. In booking concerts, and I've been lucky. I've had the opportunity I built a festival from the ground up. In 2014, we did something called the High Velocity Super Action Fun Time Mega Fest.
Say that fast 5
times. We just called it Mega Fest for short, but it was metalcore bands, and we had Bring Me the Horizon was the headliner on the first one, and it was their first time playing an arena as a headliner, and it was just a cool thing. We
gave them an opportunity.
Yeah,
too.
it was
for the fans at that point.
It sold out, and it started because Alex, our graphic designer, who's also my friend of since we were 15 years old, had made a fake poster for this festival.
Like a hypothetical.
Just made it, and it was hanging on my wall for years. And it had like the Incredible Hulk on it, like screaming, and it said High Velocity Super Action Fun Time Mega Fest, just a joke. And I hung it up on the wall, and one day Dan, who's one of the owners of the Crofoot, was like, "Why don't you make that a thing?" And I was like, "Okay." And
So
we
it turned
did.
into a vision board.
It
More
turned
like
into a
dream
real
board.
real thing. And like I said, we had a bunch of bands play Attila and Bring Me the Horizon, and we came as Romans, and I just
good.
pulled all my friends, that I knew in bands, and it was like, we're going to put together a festival, and we did it in Plymouth at CompuWare Arena, which is now USA Hockey.
Former home of the
yeah,
Whalers.
Yep, and we sold it out, and it was awesome. And one of the young ladies that works here, that was one of her first concerts. So that it kind of all ties back together, where somebody that I work with now is like, yeah, I went to that when I was like 14, and that was my favorite thing, So I made this festival from scratch, and it was one of my coworkers' favorite concerts when they were growing
that's
up.
the part you don't, like you said, you're kind of behind the curtain. It's like you don't get to hear these reactions. You don't
Right.
get to know how important you can assume, or you can hope, or you can trust that your mission was accomplished.
Right.
But you never know, because there's also negative experiences.
Oh, yeah.
At concerts.
Absolutely.
Not intentionally, I don't think usually, but I've definitely been a part of a bunch of them. I've definitely been the guy who promoted and had to clean up the messes.
Oh, yeah.
As you have. Probably, I didn't have to deal with people with guns, man. I didn't
You know,
walk out of any of my Windsor shows and be like,
that was
"Gang
much
squad police."
That
We're
was back
like,
in the day at St.
holy
Andrews. It's,
crap.
it's not something that we deal with so much now in Pontiac.
One of the scariest times I've ever had in my life was standing outside of the St. Andrews Hall after a show. Just like, whoa, gang squad, holy shit.
Well, they used to, the thing that was interesting about it, and I don't know if I'll get in trouble for telling this, but the police didn't want to deal with, the issues that came about from us doing concerts at St. Andrews back in the day. So they would basically say, if somebody's causing a problem, you guys take care of it.
Jeez.
And once you've taken care of it, we'll just come pick them up. And
That was before the Kwame Kilpatrick days even, probably. Or was it during?
it was probably during, yeah.
Like, we don't want to send police down there.
Yeah.
We're
So
going to shut down
just
the
handle
church
it.
for a little while.
Just handle it
Yeah.
is essentially what they told us.
my
And
God.
when it was handled, call us and we'll come take them away.
See, I'm still not used to the whole idea of guns.
Uh-huh.
When I moved here, everybody's like, they have guns. It's like, we know this.
Right.
Spent a lot of time in Detroit to know this. I personally never had an experience where I've seen or been held by or anything like that. I know you have.
A handful of times.
But I couldn't even imagine that. And that's kind of what makes, for you, those memories have got to be insane. You know what I mean? Like, you worry about that stuff like that out here, though?
No,
Like,
no. I don't even think about that stuff
Pontiac's
anymore.
not, like, in great, whatever right now.
So I'll put it this way. And St. Andrews had a reputation for being a tough venue.
Mm-hmm.
You went there, people got in fights, people did crazy stuff. I feel like people used to go there just to get in fights sometimes and
Right.
cause problems because that's the reputation that St. Andrews had.
Mm-hmm.
The Crofoot has never really had that vibe. So I feel like when people come here, they're on their best behavior. They're a little,
Because it's the Crofoot Ballroom.
Yes, the Crofoot Ballroom. It's
Ballroom.
fancy.
Yeah.
And, Live Nation that owns St. Andrews, they've spent a lot of money. They fixed St. Andrews up very nicely. When I was working there, 20 years ago, it was not as nice. So
The floor's still kind of falling in.
they did replace
fixed it
the
a few
floor. Yeah,
times,
they did replace the floor.
Yeah.
But, it was just a different environment, a different world, different time.
Mm-hmm.
People got into fights all the time at St. Andrews.
It's crazy. just it's a different crowd, I'd say, downtown Detroit compared to anything. I guess it goes saying Chicago or Baltimore or Boston would have
Right.
different vibes too, and it's just Detroit was a little bit more in disarray, I think, in those times. But good, bad memories. But what would you know? What before I ask you this, I want to ask a question. I know everybody likes to relate the Shelter to Eminem.
Uh-huh.
Now I know you have an Eminem story. It's not the rap battles kind of thing, but there is an Eminem story. What tell the viewers the story about Eminem being down there one day shooting a video or something you had.
Oh, so I've got a couple different ones.
Oh, there you go. So you're more than one then. That's
Yeah,
good.
so they did. I was there when they shot the Welcome to Detroit video with Trick and Eminem, and they did rent out the Shelter, and I remember they hosed everything down to get like a wet kind of gross vibe, and hung a single flash light bulb, and it was interesting because ICP, it wasn't ICP, but there was a Juggalo show upstairs happening, like a real concert at the same time as the
How
Trick and
convenient.
Eminem video shooting
How
downstairs, and
convenient.
the two sides were kind of butting heads at that point. So we'll just say some antics ensued.
Did you double book those?
No, that didn't happen.
Yeah. So you're not responsible.
And I was not
You're
responsible for that, but there was some antics later in the day that
Oh my God.
that occurred. But the other one that I thought was interesting that I remember is D12 did the cover of Rolling Stone, and they did the photo shoot at St. Andrews. They were all dressed in like military kind of garb, and I had booked while they were shooting the photographs for Rolling Stone. I had booked a local band show upstairs, and this is going to tell how old we are. I remember I was upstairs setting up for the show, and Eminem's daughter had wandered upstairs, and she was just like,
Little
"Hi."
Haley.
Yeah, she was probably this tall. She's like, "Hi," and I was like, "Hello," and now she's grown up and.
She's having a baby.
Yeah, she's having a baby,
yeah.
and I just remember, I don't know if it was Eminem or somebody from his team, but just like, Haley, get down here now. And she's like, I have to go, and she ran downstairs.
I have to go hang out with all the thugs
Yeah,
and the rap stars downstairs.
And here we are, fast forward, 20 years, and I just wonder where the last 20 years went.
Man, it goes by really fast. Like, I feel like the older we get, the years go by faster.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't, like, just you saying you've been here almost 20 years, and then that's, like, was it 2007 you came here?
Yeah, started here in
2007, oh my
October
God.
of 2007.
And that was the same year I did my baseball stadium tour, so it's like, yeah, we're right on the doorstep of 20th anniversary.
Yep.
It seems like just yesterday. It seems like, personally I've done so much, but I've done so little. Like, how does that even make any sense? Still not rich, damn it.
Yeah.
Supposed to be rich for something I did, but I'm not, so whatever. But, hey, wouldn't have led to this podcast.
Right.
So here we are today. But, so I guess, outside of the Eminem memories, what do you think was your favorite moment?
My
at St.
so
Andrews?
my favorite St. Andrews moment is probably, well, I've got a bunch of them. My favorite show that I ever saw, which whenever somebody's like, "What's the best show?" and I want to pull out like the coolest thing. When I was still an intern, we did a show with Queens of the Stone Age, and Dave Grohl playing drums. So it was like super sold out. It was in the Shelter, and
How was that in the Shelter?
it was in the Shelter.
How in the hell was that in the Shelter?
They were doing some small club
my God.
dates, and my good friend Diana Frank, shout out to Diana, thank you, gave up her guest list spot so that I could go, and I got to attend that show, and it's probably my favorite concert memory of like, this is cool.
Wow. And because there's so many.
There's so many. It's hard to just
Yeah.
pick. I've got crazy stories. Kanye West was he played St. Andrews when I worked there, and he was starting his career off and on the way up. And
Who would think Kanye West
Yeah.
at St. Andrews? See, that's the evolution.
right,
You
the
gotta
growth. You
start
got
at
to
the
follow
bottom.
that ladder. You climb the ladder
Yeah.
and you get to the top. But so Kanye was scheduled to play St. Andrews, and he was 2 or 3 hours late, and nobody could find him. And then he showed up
That's some of
randomly.
those nights.
Yeah, it was like 12:30 in the morning, and he shows up, and he had gone to the Renaissance Center because there was a movie theater, and he was watching a movie, and that's why he was late for his show.
Does he
was,
think he is Axl Rose?
I don't know. So
They even got a tighter chain on him now, too.
right.
He's like 1 minute late, you know what I mean? Man.
So that's the kind of things you deal with in the music business. It's fluid, and I feel like you have to be adaptable to survive. Because if you're rigid, you won't make it in the music business because everything is fluid
That's
and everything's
just-
constantly changing.
Yeah, it's fast paced, man. I don't think people, like when I said headless chicken earlier, I think that's like an understatement.
My favorite,
It's really,
I saw a T-shirt once that said, "Being a tour manager is easy. It's just like riding a bike,
yeah.
but the bike's on fire, and you're on fire, and everything's on fire."
And you're on water.
Yeah.
Like, how do you pedal on water? Oh my
And
God.
that's just kind of how it is. Like you have
It's
to
a
be able
hot
to,
mess.
yeah, and you have to be able to stay calm under pressure.
It's in anything can go wrong and will go wrong.
Right.
It is, no matter how much you plan.
And I feel like at this point, and I always say this, there's nothing I haven't seen at this point. You know what I mean? Like from a customer standpoint or an artist standpoint, you never know. There's been shows where I had a sold out show here at the Crofoot once, and the power was out. The electricity was like something blew a generator, not a generator, I don't know what you'd even call it. Something in the back of the building blew, and like the whole downtown was out.
Oh.
And
Damn.
the power company was here trying to fix it, and we were down to the wire whether we were even going to have a show. And then if it's like you go from I've got the sold out show. Everybody's making a bunch of money. Everybody's happy to. I'm gonna have to cancel the show, and I'm still gonna have to pay the bands and all the staff, and your day gets just totally flipped
Like, that
upside down.
deposit's gone.
Yep. So luckily the DTE got the power on, and we got to have the
Which is
show.
not usually fast
Right,
here.
right.
I'm not used to that power stuff, but
And it was down to the wire. Like, I feel like it was the last half hour before they're like, we're gonna have to cancel if we don't have power, and they got it on.
why is
So
everything got to be to the last minute? I swear.
makes for a better story, I guess.
Oh my god! Immediately when you started saying that, I have one experience like that. There used to be a bar. Actually, it was an amazing room. At the time, it was called The Residence.
Okay.
This place used to be back when I was a kid, called the Vanity Theater, like a movie theater.
Uh-huh.
I saw my first movie there, Pete's Dragon.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I'll never forget that. I won Battle of the Bands there, all these things. But anyways, it was The Residence, and I was, independently promoting.
Right.
And I had Finger 11 come in, and they were just about to drop their second album. So they were pretty big. 89X was all over them. They just put out a single off the Scream 3 soundtrack.
Okay.
Right prior to that, and they were touring with Creed, who also had a song on Scream 3, but they were label mates, whatever.
Right.
They just toured again this summer.
Okay.
The 90s tour, whatever. But in 2000 and whatever, I had Finger 11 come to The Residence. It was absolutely horrific. The worst storm you ever fucking seen.
Right.
And I had a room that was sold out at like 500 and change, but had room for like 1,500 because of bathrooms. There wasn't enough egress or bathrooms
Right.
or something.
Right.
So the place went down. The power went out all downtown Windsor for hours, and people get there early. And there's a lineup of way more people that don't have tickets. So finally, she decides to open the doors. They had like the spotlights on. It was pouring, so everybody's soaked. So they let the crowd in, and then we get to the people with the tickets. She's just like, fuck it, I don't care. Charge them all the door price, let them all in.
Right.
I don't give a shit if they're in the very back like this. But
Get 'em in.
Yeah, and I'll never forget. Smooth Sailing, the first two opening bands went on, and then Finger 11 comes on. First song, I'll never forget. They played a song. We didn't know what the hell it was then because it was new, but it was called "Drag You Down" from their second album, and it kind of starts with everything shuts down. It wasn't the power that tripped. It was downtown that tripped.
Just shut down.
Shut down again, and I'll never forget. So you see Rick up there, the guitar player, and he's just stomping on shit. We were so pissed off. There's nothing anybody could do.
Right.
So we waited a few minutes. Couldn't. It's just like we either have to wait this out a few minutes. Last time was hours, or we have to send everybody home, and then everybody's gonna be pissed. And that's the thing. And then I'm telling you, I don't know if it was 5 minutes, but whatever rock and roll gods were on our side that night, the power flipped back. They took a couple minutes to make sure everything was, the amps and stuff have to kind of reheat.
Right.
And then went on with the show. But holy shit, the 3 hours that we waited to let people in and stuff, like, that was atrocious. I mean, it worked out because we made a lot of cash on the side that night. But that was one of the best flipping shows. I think crowd-wise, and 89X was involved, and the band was just at this start of like a trajectory, and I had them back like 10 times.
Right.
And I sold bigger and bigger and bigger venues, roller skating arenas and stuff like that with them twice. And my brother even brought them back once. He's like, "Why the hell not? You did it." So,
Right.
he's like, I'll take a page out of your book. But those are the things that you don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to book a show 6 months out and be like, "Oh, maybe it'll rain. It's May. It's April showers. We're good." So, but those are the,
You have to be fluid.
Yeah,
You have to roll with the punches.
100%. And I mean, yeah, it's just, it gets old, it gets stressful. I mean, with that being said, has there ever been a moment where you don't want to do this anymore? Is sometimes that fluidity just too much to have to be constantly flowing?
I don't think that's the issue. I think with any job, there's points where you're like, I don't want to do this today.
It's still work.
Yeah, it's still work. For as much fun as it is, and as thankful as I am for the opportunity to basically bring fun for people and have a good time for a living, it is still work, and it's stressful, and it's a gamble because artists have guarantees, and you don't always know if the tickets are going to sell. So that's a lot of the stress. Because if you don't sell the tickets, the band still gets paid.
Yeah, that's the only guarantee is that they get paid.
Well, and I feel like everybody in the industry is guaranteed to get paid except the promoter. The band's going to get their guarantee, Staff's going to get paid regardless. The agent's going to get their commission. The manager's going to get their commission. But at the end of the day, if the tickets don't sell, the promoter's left holding the bag.
Promoter profit doesn't exist until there's a
profit.
Yeah.
So
Keyword.
Yeah.
Profit.
to get your percentage of the profit, there has to be profit. So that's nerve-wracking. But over the last 20 years, you kind of develop a feeling, and I generally will have an off-the-cuff number right away when somebody's like, oh, this act is going on tour. I have a feeling, how many tickets it's going to sell.
But you know your market.
Yeah.
After all these years, you know it better than anybody.
I've been here my whole life, and I've been going to concerts since I was a teenager, and it's just what I've always done. I don't know that I know anything else really. So I'm happy to be here. You getting dripped on?
No, it's flyers.
Oh.
I'm trying to get up my eye socket. But yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
So obviously you said you've been to a million concerts too.
Yes.
What is your favorite concert memory?
Oh, I don't know. Working or attending?
Attending. As a fan.
As a fan,
Yeah.
probably that Queens of the Stone Age show, to be honest.
See, that one's pivotal.
You just can't. The first show I ever went to, as we were talking about before the recording started, I was 15 years old, and I used to call into A9X all the time to try to win tickets. And
I thought it was only me.
Yeah. What was funny, my dad had a construction business that he ran out of the house, and he had 4 phone lines. So I would call on the first one, put on hold, dial again, put on hold. So I'd have 4 going, and then I would go back and see which one was ringing. And then just, if it wasn't ringing, then I'd redial that one. So I had 4 times the opportunities to call in on the call-in contests. And I believe it was Millen was hosting. And I don't know if they were even still doing the giveaway. It was like when you hear Bush on the radio, call in. So I called in, and I said, are you still doing the ticket giveaways? And he's like, hang on. And then he came back, he's like, yeah. So I ended up getting tickets and backstage passes to see Bush and Goo Goo Dolls and No Doubt at the Palace when I was 15 years old, and that was my first concert experience. So I got to meet Gwen Stefani and all the members of No Doubt, and Gavin and all of Bush. Goo Goo Dolls, unfortunately, were not backstage for that for whatever reason, so I didn't get to meet them. But I was just kind of hooked at that point. Like, when that's your first experience going to a concert, you're kind of spoiled from that on out. Like, I got to go backstage. It's my first show.
You got a taste, man.
Yeah.
You got a taste. You're
So
like, give me more.
I ended up, playing in bands and parlaying that into a, 20-plus year music business career.
Thought.
Yeah.
You're like, I just want to play music, man.
Yeah. I thought I was going to be a rock star.
You are a rock star. How many times am I going to tell you?
Well, I thought I was going to be a rock star that got paid to make music for a living.
Yeah.
And I
sit in the back of the bus and
Yeah.
do nothing. Right.
Which, again, I've been on a tour bus. It's
Letting
not
you take care of the business.
right. It's not as exciting as everybody thinks going on tour either. Like, you're in a bus, you're sleeping on a bus a lot of nights. It's rocking and swaying, and
Those bunks suck.
they're very tight, and you wake up in a new city every day. You don't have any car to drive around. You don't know where you're going.
You don't necessarily know what city you're in.
Yeah, you just kind of wake up and you're like, okay,
Tuesday.
we're going. And the tour and rock star life that everybody thinks it is not really that.
No.
It's not really that exciting.
It's not glamorous.
Nope.
It's
a lot of work.
when people don't understand how a band, especially when they've done it their whole life, like take like a Green Day, for example. They've gone from the little to this worldwide massive, 20 rigs touring kind of thing, and all the members have their own bus and so on and so forth. It's like when they get home, they almost have a desire to be back on the road because it's more comfortable, despite how uncomfortable it is.
There is an adjustment period when you come back.
Yeah, and I've never been away long enough where I really felt that. I mean, not on the road for music, it was usually short,
Right.
3 month and a half or whatever. But when these guys are going out for 2 years at a time,
Right.
that is your home.
Yep.
And you change buses every country you go to.
Right.
So you're constantly, it's more like renting short term.
Yeah.
it's a short term lease. But we're not cut out for that. Like, people aren't necessarily meant to be famous anyway, but you're going out there doing your job, and people think there's just this glamorous part to it. Not everybody is Beyonce.
Right.
I guess.
Right.
You know what I mean? And when you're touring with these groups and you're going on the road, it's just, it can I guess that's why a lot of guys get into drugs and alcohol. And,
Oh, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah. Literally.
You know, we would, you know, we
Pokemon
drank a lot
if you
on the
have
bus.
that, you know, if wherever.
We did a lot of drinking on the bus. That's kind of, you know, how you put yourself to sleep.
A lot of Halo with the bands I used to roll
Yeah.
with. A lot of Halo in the back. You know, you got to shoot each other up while you're on the road.
Right.
Oh man. But yeah, that's. I mean, it's tough to get into it, but it's like if you ever were to leave this industry, you think you'd have an adjustment period. And what would you want to do if it wasn't this?
If I wasn't doing this, if I could coach baseball full time or be a kindergarten teacher. Yeah, you know, I love kids, and
Don't talk back.
No, I just feel like getting in at the ground level and helping set them up for, you know, success is kind of an awesome thing to do as a person, you know. So if I wasn't doing music stuff, I would probably, you know, and I do coach baseball.
You do already, yeah.
But you know, if I could make a full-time gig coaching baseball, I would be just as happy as booking concerts, I think, or you know, being a teacher and just being around kids and helping them learn and grow.
Well, right now, your son Max you're coaching your son.
Yes.
So you kind of get it's one of those things where you get to help your own son and others, and he's good.
He's a pretty good baseball
player.
player.
He's good for his age. So I mean, and he has the mindset, he wants it, and all that kind of stuff. And it's like you get to see that develop, you get to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, would you still want to do it even if he wasn't involved in it?
Oh yeah. So I started coaching at a high school last year, and he was still in middle school. But the joy in it for me was a lot of the kids on the high school team I coached when they were in Little League.
Right.
So they were his friends and his teammates, and some of them were a little bit older and got to high school before he did. So I had the opportunity to coach the same kids as young adults that I did when they were little 8-year-olds, and seeing the growth and knowing that I was part of that development and helping get them ready for the rest of their high school career and hopefully potentially college and playing baseball in college. That's special to me. You know, it's important, and I'm glad I get to be a part of their lives and a small part of their journey into becoming adults.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm definitely envious of that. I mean, you have a son you can get to be there with, but the teaching and watching these kids develop and grow and learn, and you help that, there's like serious gratification in that.
100%.
You know, and some people don't ever get to experience that. Some people aren't teachers. Some people aren't coaches.
Right.
But yeah, I know I talk to you often, so I know you get pretty excited about it, and so you should. I mean, that's awesome that you get to do it with your kid too. And hopefully it works out for him, you know, because if you can get your son into college on a scholarship.
Right. And there's the key thing that we hammer to all the kids is grades. Yeah. You know, you can be the best baseball player.
Athlete, student first.
Absolutely. If you are the best baseball player, but you have a 2.5, you're going to get passed up by a lot of colleges.
Yeah, that's just it. Well, there was friends back home I had that they were some of the best football players in Canada. But when you translate that into America, it's a different thing.
Right.
And I remember my one friend, he was close, you know, my neighbor, in fact, and he wanted to go to Michigan. But we didn't study and prepare for these SATs. It wasn't part of our anything in school. And his marks weren't good enough.
Right.
And I saw people who had good grades that I knew that tried to get to Michigan, and they couldn't get in. And he went on to, you know, go somewhere else, and he won a couple national championships and got drafted in the NFL and stuff like that. He didn't go far because of an injury, but that's the reality. You get to that point, they do a body scan essentially.
Oh yeah.
Like, did you hurt yourself?
You're a very expensive asset.
Yeah. You're like, no, we can't cover that insurance. So it was unfortunate, but I mean, you know, he had a good run and he went to college and he's made a life for himself. You know, and that's all you can hope to do, right? College first.
Right.
And then if you are not a touted, you know, some of these baseball kids are getting scouted at 16.
Oh yeah, that's when it really starts. The colleges can start reaching out to you and giving you a look when you're a junior, and it's pretty crazy.
Derek Jeter struck out once in high school.
That's incredible.
Or
I don't know his high school
it was
stats,
once in
but
his senior year, but it was in high school.
Uh-huh.
But that's what makes a major leaguer.
Right.
One strikeout.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
Bat to ball skills are very important.
Yeah. I mean, but he's a freak. He's a Hall of Famer. He's
Kalamazoo.
The Yankees.
He's from Kalamazoo. Yeah.
So he's a Michigander.
Yeah.
It's around here.
Yep.
It flows. But anyways, back to music. If there was, one memory that you had from here. We talked about St. Andrews, but what memory from here in almost 20 years you've been to the Crofoot that stands out? I've only been to a couple shows here now, and I've got some that stand out.
I I don't know if there's any that really are above and beyond. I mean, there's lots of funny stories. There's lots. I did one of the ones that was like, I can't believe that this is happening. We did Public Image Limited. I forget what year it was. It might have been 2012. Which, if you aren't familiar with Public Image Limited, it's Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, his new wave band from the 80s, and they hadn't toured the States in like 30 years.
It's crazy
And-
they're still out
yeah.
doing that.
And they came here, and the show was sold out, and he lived up to the name Johnny Rotten to a T. Like, he was just such a interesting guy to work with. It started off where we had used a picture of him for the poster that he did not approve or like.
Oh, no.
So he let me know he was very unhappy about that.
To call your agent.
Yeah. And then when they got on the stage and they were performing, they had given us explicit instructions that nobody is to be in front of the stage. Like security guards, they want them on the ends. They don't want them behind the barricade, in the line of sight of the crowd. And I didn't want anybody coming down to get to Johnny Rotten or, be able to access him. So I had a security guard sitting right outside my office. Like, I was like, if it's not me and it's not somebody from Johnny Rotten's team, like, don't let anybody pass here.
Tackle him.
Yeah, like, stop them. So it's the middle of the show, and I'm in the office downstairs, I can hear Johnny Rotten from upstairs saying, "Where's the promoter? Where is the promoter?" And it turns out that one of the security guards took it upon himself to stand in front of the stage during the set and was leaning on one of the monitor speakers. And Johnny asked him
How did you not
politely.
get the memo?
Yeah, I mean, I gave them all instructions. I said, do not stand in front of the stage. So Johnny proceeded to tell him that he was being rude and to get the fuck off our stage. And you're
Stop doing what you
yeah,
normally
you're being
do.
very rude. And he's like, I pay your salary. So the security guard decided to take money out of his pocket, and he's waving it at Johnny Rotten. And Johnny is furious. And then after the set, the security guard decided to come downstairs, and he was going to beat up Johnny Rotten.
Yeah, okay.
And luckily, the security guard that I had set outside the office door stopped him long enough for me to get involved and be like, no, we're not doing this. You're not, because I was like, that's going to be national news
Oh, yeah, dude.
if you beat up Johnny Rotten.
Oh, yeah.
So,
We'll go to jail.
yeah.
Let's start there.
So we got that calmed down, and everything was fine. But then we brought them back like a year later and did the show at iLounge. They thought it was going to be bigger, and it didn't do as well the second time. And we did it in the basement of Clutch Cargo's, and it was the same sort of thing. He's on the stage, and he's like, get this red light out of my eyes. And I'm like, what red light is he even talking about? And it took me 10 minutes. I'm running around. He's like, we're not going to perform until this red light is out of my eyes. He gets in, he's like swearing. So he lives up to the name for sure.
God.
He's definitely rotten.
So he was a Sex Pistol. So does that mean he's a dick? Because that's what a Sex Pistol is.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
he proved the name.
Yeah, he's definitely
in
rotten.
Theory,
yeah,
Johnny Rotten.
It's not just a
dick.
persona. He lives it.
Oh man. Well, you know what? Rock and roll, man.
Yeah.
But that guy trying to puff his chest. It's like, but he didn't do his job to start with.
Right.
So he was in the wrong.
Yeah. He should have stayed out of the barricade.
Waves him up.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
He just. There's videos of it on the internet if you.
That,
if you
that I gotta see. Now.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'll share one story and then we can call it a day. I mean,
Okay.
I don't want to hold you. But when I moved over here and I reached out to you, you're like, hey, oh yeah, we're gonna go show. Let me know, whatever. And I was like, you mentioned El King.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm like, yeah, my wife loves El King. She's got a couple of fun little, drunk country songs, whatever. And that one, X's and O's, everybody knows.
Right.
And that's about where my limit was. But so you put me on the guest list. I come out. You weren't here that night. And, being a guy who likes to film things and whatever and enjoy those very random rock and roll
Right.
moments, that was one of them. That night was one of them. And I'll share this story real quick. Come to see El King, thinking, okay, this is gonna be a cool little show. It was a radio thing. She
Right.
already had to postpone
It was free.
once. It was free. Place was fucking packed, man. It was packed.
Yeah.
And you had this massive band come out. I don't know who they were. A massive band come out and open the show. Then she comes out. It's just her with like a guitar and another two dudes
Right.
just playing stripped down as you could be. And she was bent about that right out the gate. But she was also clearly 1/5 away from hitting the floor from being that
Right,
wasted.
right.
And you could tell, she's like, "What this? And somebody punched that guy. And if he sings Freebird again, I'm going to kick his ass." Like, it was just right out the gate.
Right.
There was something up, and you could tell. So at one point in the concert, I'd say maybe half an hour in, she's like, "Hey," she's constantly yelling up at people in the
Right.
balcony because they were taunting her and saying some stuff, and she was bent. So she had it right in the middle of the song. She stopped and stormed off the stage later. But prior to that, she's up there by herself, and she's like, "Hey, shut the fuck up and listen. This is
Right.
important." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, this is Ray Bolt."
Right.
I don't know what she's going to say. She's saying, "Pay attention." So I put the camera on, and I end up recording what ended up being a 10-minute monologue, essentially, which also included her yelling at the people and saying, "They're fucking this," and I'll wait till everybody's quiet, that kind of thing. And then it turned out her monologue was about earlier that morning, there was a shooting in a little grade school or
Right.
school in Nashville
Right.
where she's from, and one of her good friends was one of the teachers
Right.
who died that morning, and she, how could you not be emotional?
Right.
She tried to cancel the show, and it had already been canceled once, and whoever in her party said, "No, you got to do it.
Right.
You got to do it." So they gave her no chance. Now, I know we talked about it later that she was dry. She kind of kicked an alcohol problem, or was continually trying to. It came to an end that day,
Yeah.
but she literally went off and for 10 straight minutes and said it was like it was, like nobody gives a fuck about you. You have to take care of yourself, and people were talking through it. She's like being open and emotional,
Right.
and it was one of those crazy
Sharing how
moments,
she really felt.
really being personal, and people just kept talking over her. And she's like crying. She's like, "See, you can't even fucking listen. I'm telling you that my friend got murdered today."
Yeah. Right. And you don't care.
Whatever, you don't give a shit.
Right.
And it was, like I said, right after that, she goes into the next song, and it just continued. And she knocked her shit down, kicked out, and left. I had never got a video. I had barely just got on TikTok at that point, and I posted that video. Millions of views.
Right.
In like less than 48 hours. I couldn't believe it. And I mean, she's had another little moment in the last year since then.
Right.
But I only got a couple Crofoot memories, but that was one hell of a whopper, man. I never would have guessed that.
Right.
I was I think I might have been the only one that got that whole speech on video. Which is
Because you were,
yeah, it was
as soon as you heard, you're like, I'm
as soon
going.
as I heard her, I'm like, I got everything but her saying, "Pay attention," and then I got the rest of the things. So that was, to me, that's some straight up rock and roll history, man.
Well,
that could have been a turning point for her career, even more so.
Or her life.
Or
But
her life.
the thing, it illustrates a bigger point too, and this is one of the things that we can leave as a closing message if you want. I've worked in this business for almost 25 years. I've seen all kinds of shows. I've worked with all kinds of artists from little to really, really superstar level, and what fans miss a lot of the time, because fans being fanatics, they get so enamored and obsessed with the artist that they're just people. At the
Right.
end of the day, Elle King is just a person, and she has feelings, and it's the same with all the artists, and they put themselves out there for your entertainment, and they go above and beyond, and they stay on the road, and they do all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, they're people like you and me, and it's important not to lose sight of that when they're giving their time,
Right.
or their energy or their effort. They don't have to do that all the time.
And she made it clear too. She's like, "This one is not normal." She's like, "I'm coming up after a 1,000-piece band,
Right.
by myself. I'm playing for free." She's like, "This is not normal, and you guys don't give a shit."
Right.
Like, it was so deep in her gut. Like, she was just, I get it, man. Like, I witnessed it, and I was sober.
Right.
A lot of people drinking, they're partying, and I think that was one of those nights where a lot of those freebies were just out for the good time.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
they didn't know her, they knew the hits.
Or knew a song, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, I wasn't disappointed it ended that way. I was just kind of like, wow, I just witnessed something that, like you said, we know a little bit better, because, I've been there with rock star friends when I've watched them drink a 40 of booze because
Right.
their fiance just dumped them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or whatever. Yeah, it's just, people don't get to see that part of it, and she really let it go that night, and I don't blame her.
Right.
Because there's no fucking way I would have gone on stage if I lost a
No.
friend, unless it was I don't know. It's different. You know, how do you sing when you're fighting tears?
Right.
You're choking up. How do you sing, you know, like that? You know, a pitcher in the major leagues or a quarterback, like my dad died today, and I'm gonna go out.
Right. Win one for him. Yeah.
But there's a release of adrenaline and all this pent up stuff in that. But it's like for her that day, I can't believe she even walked on that stage. I would have just flat out refused.
Right.
But I mean, for all people involved, it happened, but only to a degree.
Yeah.
So did she, you know, maintain her obligation? You know, to one degree or another, she did.
Yeah, she showed up. She played the show.
She played the show, but it's like, man, that's like you said, that's a deep thought, man. Because we aren't bulletproof.
Nope.
Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter if you're Rob.
How big of a star you are. Yeah.
You know, Daddy can't help what happened in Nashville, and he can't help everything that comes after that. You know, I just hope she's okay. I thought she was cool as a performer. She's great, but that just captures the realism of what they deal with and how we only want one thing for them. We just want them to get up there and sing.
Yep, entertain us
and go home,
and
yeah,
not think about them as people most of the time.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's a message. Rock stars are
people.
not gods. They're people.
Yeah.
You know,
They have
gods
feelings.
maybe, but yeah. It's crazy. But is there anything else you want to share before I cut you out? Let you go back to work?
I don't think so. I mean, we could do this. I didn't even scratch the surface of of stories.
So much, and I know we're going to shut off the cameras and we're going to start telling all the other juicier ones, juicier details. It's like this one time.
Yeah.
But you know what? Great conversation. I just appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
And letting some of the viewers, hear some of the things that go on a different level, and and just again, when you're at these shows, concerts or places like this, just be aware of your environment.
Yeah.
Take it all in.
There's a whole team of people that work very hard to make sure that you don't even realize we're there, and that you have a very good time.
Yeah, and we're passionate about that. Like Justin here will literally, you spend day and night working on this stuff, and people don't get that. It's like a 24-hour.
You never unplug.
Yeah, fluid, like you said.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, thanks again for checking out the podcast. Again, this was my guest, good friend Justin Pidruzny. He's one of the buyers here at the Crofoot Ballroom in Pontiac, Michigan. And once again, I'm the Toddfather, and the rest is rock and roll history. Boom.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome.